All right, well, let's talk about interviewing prep. And I'm not exactly sure what this is going to look like for all of you. I know the Career Expo has not been in person in a couple of years, and we'll see about this year too. Who knows? I have structured this particular presentation to look at both virtual interviewing as well as what happens in an in-person interview. So hopefully it will touch on both things because we are not quite sure how this year will go yet. So today we'll go over how to prepare for the interview itself coming up. I'm going to teach all of you how to answer an interview question using the STAR method, which some of you may have heard of before. And then also, how do you follow up with these employers after the expo is concluded? Because this is an ongoing conversation. So let's briefly talk about for any virtual interview that you might have coming up. It could be that you meet an employer at the expo and maybe they have a follow-up meeting virtually with you. So just general rules of thumb around virtual spaces, make sure that your space looks as professional as it possibly can. So whether it's using a background like I'm using right now to make sure my background is very bland and the central focus is my face, that's what's key. So make sure you have a plain background, nothing distracting. A plain wall behind you is also fine. But try to not have multiple pictures or posters or a bright window right behind you because that will make your face look really dark. Make sure you do have good lighting, but always have light hitting your face, not from behind. Okay, so make sure you have a lamp or a window, anything in front of your face, not behind you. Make sure that your space is quiet. Make sure that your phone's not going off. You have a pet barking or meowing or whatever the case may be in the background. Make sure you have a quiet space. And also no visual distractions around you. Again, the phone is a huge culprit for this. If my phone is buzzing over here, it might distract me from the interview and what I'm saying. So just make sure everything is off your desk, away from your area, so nothing's distracting. And then another thing that a lot of us don't think about when we have laptops, I'm working off a laptop right now, but make sure your camera is at the same level as your eye, so that you're not looking down on the camera or up at the camera, but you're looking directly into the camera. And I'll just give you a quick demonstration here, but I'm in a swivel chair. And if I was doing an actual interview, I would not be in the swivel chair because I'm going to swivel when I get nervous. And so being in a chair that's stable is really key when doing something virtually, okay? So those are just a few tips. As far as technology, obviously this has been a concern and kind of a barrier for some of us, especially with snowstorms and ice storms and a myriad of other things that might cause technology to go in and out. So always make sure if you do have a virtual call with an employer, make sure your internet connection is strong. Even days, weeks, whenever you get the link from the employer or the virtual meeting, make sure you click on it just to make sure that you don't need to download any application to use it. Not every employer uses Zoom or WebEx or GoToMeeting or all of these other apps. So just make sure that your computer is able to download whatever application needed for the actual interview itself. And then it's okay if you go ahead and launch that program and make sure that your audio and video works well. It would be really terrible if you got into the interview and they couldn't hear you well, or maybe your video could not come on for a variety of reasons. So always make sure to go in and practice that. All right, so let's just talk about how to prepare though in general for an interview. So I mentioned this in the first session on resumes, but knowing the organization that you want to speak with and interview with is extremely important. In fact, this is the number one thing that employers say turns them off from a future candidate, is when that candidate has really no idea about what they do as an employer. One of the worst questions you can ask in an interview is, tell me more about what your firm does, because you should already know that. You should already be investing in research in what that particular firm does. And so always look at a variety of sources to learn more about each architectural firm before you go to the Career Expo. All of you should be given a list of the different firms you'll be meeting with, so you have lots of time to be able to really look into what they do on a daily basis. Glassdoor is one of my favorite places to go to. And I won't showcase it just because of time's sake, but if you go to glassdoor.com, you can put in the name of a firm and you can actually look at reviews from current and former employees. You can read about the approval levels of that particular firm. You can see salary ranges for a variety of opportunities. You can see interview questions that they have asked previous interviewees. And so it's a really helpful website to be able to do some research on firms that maybe you don't know much about. The organization's website also is extremely helpful in knowing their overall vision, the types of projects they're focused on, how they're engaged in the community. If you are on LinkedIn, I highly encourage you to check out the organization's page and to see if you can even find some of the interviewers listed on LinkedIn and go ahead and start connecting with them. Let them know that you are excited to speak with them at the expo. And again, build that clientele within LinkedIn to start building a bigger connection base. And then also you can just use Google. It's interesting sometimes to Google a particular firm to see if they come up in any relevant news stories. And just to see, have they made an impact or won an award? What are they doing currently? Are they in the news? And that's always something fun to chat with the employer about if you're able to find some things. Know the position details as much as you possibly can. And I'm not sure how much detail you're given prior to your short interviews at the Career Expo. You may not be given very much information at all. So you might even want to look on the employer's website for those that you are going to interview with to see if they happen to have an internship description or a full-time career description, just so you kind of have an idea of what you need to focus, what you're going to say to that employer, how to really tailor what you're going to say to what they're looking for, okay? That can be a little tricky depending on the situation. So that may or may not be feasible, but do your best to find any type of example of a position if you're not readily given one. Again, know about the employer if possible, okay? Especially with smaller firms that may only have a few full-time employees. It's pretty easy to find them on LinkedIn and be able to look at their backgrounds, their years of experience, certifications, and go ahead and connect with them that way. And then again, the biggest thing of all of this is once you've done the research, once you identify who the people are who will be potentially interviewing you at the expo, you need to think about what is your fit with this position and this organization. Okay, that is really key. And that's not for the employer to know. The employer has no idea why you might be a good fit. You get to speak to yourself into your own experience and why do you really fit this position that they're hiring for well. So you've got to think about that. And it's okay to go in to this interview with notes. Okay, it's okay to have a padfolio and go in with some notes, things that you've thought about that really tie into this particular internship or full-time job. Let's talk about dress. So the expo is more of a business casual type of environment. I do see people dressed in more of a business professional type outfit as well. But in general, you want to think about wearing neutral colors. Okay, so those dark navies, black, white, gray, tan, it's just some of those neutral colors. You want to avoid, really loud colors. So any neons, bright red or bright green, anything that would draw my attention away from your face. And so this is for the ladies out there, no excessive jewelry. So really long dangly earrings or huge necklaces. Again, anything that draws my attention. Hair can be worn however you would like to wear your hair. Naturally, you could wear it, up in a ponytail if you like, down, it does not matter. Just make sure it's well groomed. Make sure you brush your hair. That's the key. But in general, you want to think neat, clean, make sure there are no spots or stains on your clothing. Make sure your clothing is ironed and also well fitting. You may have lost some weight or gained some weight over Christmas. And you want to make sure your clothes are well fitting so that you look really good in whatever you're wearing. So it's not so much about the clothes, but it's how it fits. So this is just an example of business casual versus business professional. You'll notice that on the left is more business casual, meaning that those khaki pants, maybe sweater, or just an unbuttoned collared shirt. Sometimes I see blouses or just a little bit more casual in the type of fabric that you're wearing. Versus the professional, you're looking at more of that much more tailored suit, tie, blouse, much more darker colors, the dark navies and blacks, and sometimes dark gray. So just pay attention to this. Most likely for the expo, we're looking more for that business casual. Okay. And it doesn't always mean you have to wear a suit. Sometimes a buttoned up shirt and a tie is perfectly adequate. Okay. So the biggest thing again is make sure it's well fitting, ironed, and neat. Okay. That's the key. All right. So some of the things that employers are looking for during the interview. Do you have the skills to do the job? So part of this is looking at your resume, seeing what skills you've listed there, also seeing what skills you've put in your portfolio. And then you will have the ability to talk about your skills verbally with that employer one-on-one. And then again, you need to understand what is the goal of this particular internship or full-time position, and how do I know that I really understand what this position is all about, and how can I know I can be successful in it? How do I know I'm going to be a successful intern? So start trying to think about that for yourself and jotting down some notes of why do you think you would be successful? Do you, again, know about the organization? Because they will ask, I promise. And ultimately, they are wanting to evaluate, will you fit their team well? They know other interns they've had before. They know what their culture in that office is. And so they're trying to identify those students who will fit their team dynamic well. So you kind of have to feel the room a little bit when you're interviewing with employers. Some may be a little bit more extroverted and outgoing and fun. Others may be a little bit more reserved and serious. It just depends. So as you're talking with them, you can ask questions about their culture and environment, team dynamics, to get a sense of that and what type of team you might be looking for. So some things to think about. It can be very easy to not have eye contact during an interview because you're a little nervous, right? I get nervous. It's just natural. To not be nervous in an interview is just not normal. So it's okay to be a little nervous, but you want to make sure you're looking at the person in the eyes. So try not to keep your head down and always be thinking and looking somewhere else because you're nervous. When you're in person, obviously look directly into their eyes. When you are on Zoom or another type of web platform, make sure you're looking directly into the camera, because if I'm looking down at the screen, it does not look like I'm looking at your eyes. Okay. This is something that takes a lot of practice. So make sure you're looking directly in the camera. Make sure you're smiling throughout the interview. It may seem weird to smile throughout the interview, but it just makes you look much more approachable, happy, excited to be there, and very engaging with them, especially if they've just met with a few other students. It just makes them really want to engage with who you are. Make sure you're either sitting up straight in the chair if you're over Zoom, or standing up straight if you're meeting them in person at the fair. Try not to fidget. Again, we talked about the swivel chair. In person, it's very easy to talk with your hands or to tap your foot really fast if you're nervous, or to twist your hair or whatever the case may be. So make sure you're not fidgeting. Try to hold your hands in your lap if you're like me. I love talking with my hands. A big thing that you have to really practice is not to be scripted. I want all of you to practice some of the tips I'm giving you, but I don't want you to sound like you're giving a speech. I want you to be able just to sound like you're meeting a friend over coffee. Okay. You're having a conversation about this internship and why you think you might be a good fit. This is not a TED talk where you have to get up on a stage and present something. Okay. Think about it as a casual conversation. Always have your resume on hand for reference, because they may have already had a stack of resumes, or they may already have received it in your portfolio, but have it for reference because they may ask you about something on it and you want to be able to just glance down really quickly and remind yourself what's on it, because in the moment it's easy to forget. And then always have 2 to 3 questions to ask the employer towards the end of the interview, and I'll give you some examples in just a minute. So some of the topics that you will probably cover at the expo, any career goals that you personally have, what type of architecture you're looking at personally, again, knowledge of the employer, personal qualifications that align you with this particular internship, your career choice rationale. Why did you decide to be an architect? Tell me more about that. The education and training you've had up to this point. Again, whether you're a first year, second year, third year, fourth year graduate student, they kind of want to know what level you are so they can know how to best place you in their firm. Any previous experience that's relevant to this next opportunity. If you are geographically flexible, some of you may have opportunities to travel to a different state for your internship. The expo attracts employers from all over the country, some of which are from other states: Virginia, Florida, Tennessee. The last time I went to the expo in person, I met people from all over the country. So if you have that geographic flexibility, be willing to talk with those employers about that. And then again, any additional past achievements, honors and awards, study abroad, etc. So let's talk about the two types of interview questions that you'll be asked. One of them is that traditional interview question that tell me about yourself or tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. So these again are overarching big picture kinds of questions, and you're just giving a nice quick overview about yourself, about who you are, what your education is, if you've had previous experience in architecture before, just a very quick snippet. You're not going to give your entire life story. You're not going to talk about anything negative, especially when they ask you about weaknesses. With strengths, I want you to pick maybe 1 to 3 strengths that really go along with architecture. What strengths would they appreciate you having? And then weaknesses, think about something that you have been growing from, something that you've been able to work around. Maybe it's organization, or being, there's so many examples, having good time management skills. Think about something that you are improving upon and talk with that employer about how have you been improving upon that particular area that could be considered weakness, yet will not hinder you from getting this internship, okay? And then but the behavioral questions is really where you'll spend the most of your time. So they'll ask you about your behavior, seeing how if you've behaved in a particular way in the past, most likely you'll behave in a very similar way in the future. So tell me about a time when you dealt with conflict with a peer. Tell me about your leadership style, or what role do you play on a team? So those are some questions. And the best way to answer any of these behavioral questions is with this format called the STAR technique. So for instance, if I were to ask you, tell me about the role you have played on a group project, because all of you have had group projects, no doubt. And so when you think about that, whether you were the leader, whether you were the person organizing or the communicator, think about what was your particular role on a team. What was the situation? What was the project you were working on? How many people were on your team? When was it due? Think details. Think about the task that had to be accomplished from this team effort. And what did you specifically do as an action? That's that A. What did you specifically do to get that particular task done? And then always remember to include the positive result. So what was that end result that was so meaningful to you that made that experience worth it? Okay. So again, any of these types of questions that are more behavioral based, think about the STAR technique. And again, I'll show you where to find this guide within our career guide in a few minutes. Okay. So I don't know if we have time to practice. I would really love to practice, but we're so close to time. So I'm going to skip this slide, but if anybody wants to practice after the fact, I'll be glad to hang out with somebody and practice. So I mentioned earlier, have at least 3 questions ready for the employer. Always have questions. If you get to the end of an interview and they ask you if you have questions and you say no, that tells them you're really not that interested in their job. Okay. So always have questions. I usually go in with more than 3. I usually have probably about 10 questions, just because in the midst of just the casual talk, sometimes they're going to answer my questions without me asking. So I like going in with a little bit more than I think I might need. So some of the ones that I enjoy asking are, tell me about a typical day in your firm. What's it like? Is there a typical day? I see your organization really cares about the environment, sustainability. Tell me more about this. And then also I love asking, individual employers, what do you like most about working for this particular organization? That really tells me a lot about them, but also the organization. If they give me very specific things that they like about the organization, does that relate to what I might like? Now, is that an organization that I would find meaningful? Okay, so always go in with quite a few questions. And then after the interview, I encourage all of you to do this within 24 hours of going to the expo. Okay, so I think the expo is on a Friday. So by Saturday evening, everybody should have written thank you notes to each of the employers that they met with. So make sure when you're at the expo to collect business cards from every single person that you meet with. If for whatever reason this event goes virtual, again, you're collecting email addresses and names from these people you're talking with. And you're basically thanking them. And again, I'll show you a thank you note example in our career guide. You're thanking them for the experience of meeting with them. It's okay to clarify when you might hear back from them regarding this internship, whether it's for the summer or for next fall. It's okay to refer to something. Maybe they talked about a project they were working on, or maybe you just had something that you related on. It's okay to refer to that in the thank you note. And then always reiterate your interest in the position, even if personally it was not your top choice. Always make each interviewer feel like they were your top choice, okay? And then if for whatever reason, if you do not hear back from these individual employers after 2 weeks, it's okay to follow up again after 2 weeks, okay? But if they've already told you, for instance, if I ask during my time with an employer, when might I hear about next steps? And they say, we'll let everyone know next month, then I may not, touch base after 2 weeks because I know they haven't made their decision yet. So you'll have to play that one employer by employer. But in general, please always write a thank you note. It really helps you stand out in a very positive way. So a few things just to think about in interviews is never chew gum. Obviously at the event, it can be tempting, especially, well, we all want fresh breath, but we don't want to chew gum. It's just a very unprofessional way. It looks like you're eating the whole time. So no chewing gum. Never talk negatively about a former position or a former employer or a former peer, okay? Always keep everything positive that you're speaking about. You have the skill sets, your experience has been valuable. The people that you've worked with before have helped you grow, okay? We're not throwing anyone under the bus. I want you to be confident in your responses, but don't be arrogant. So kind of have that balance of I'm very confident in who I am as an artist, as a designer, and I want to showcase that in these interviews. So I think each of you know what sort of that fine line is between confidence and arrogance. Again, always appear interested, even if you're not. You might be meeting with an employer, realize halfway through the conversation, this is not for me. I don't want to move to Arkansas to do this internship. That's okay. They don't need to know that right away. Always appear interested. I say leave your phone at home, but if all else, turn it off and just put it in your book bag. And then obviously don't wear the wrong attire. Make sure your attire is appropriate. Okay, a few things that you can utilize though in the next few weeks as you get ready to practice. We have free software that you can practice with through the Career Center called Big Interview. And you can find that at biginterview.charlotte.edu. And when you log in, it looks very similar to this image on the right-hand side of the screen where you'll have a pretend interviewer asking you some questions, and you can then watch yourself back and record yourself so that you can see what you sound like, how you're saying different things, and also looking into the camera. So it's a really great way to practice. We also have mock interview. You can always do that with a career coach if you want to over the next few weeks. You can just go into Hire a Niner, and instead of making an arts, media, and design appointment, you can just make a mock interview appointment. Okay, so two very helpful things to do, especially before you interview at the CareerEXPO for the first time. So I'm going to, again, get out of this particular page, and I'm going to head over to our website because I want to show you where some of these different items are in the career guide. Let me pull that up. So when you click on the career guide, it is an interactive book. And so let me scroll through to some of the pages that I think will be most helpful. Let's see, not that one. We do have pages on LinkedIn, so for those of you wanting to connect that way, please look at that. The reference list I mentioned earlier for those of you who were in the resume workshop, the reference page is on 33. So if you are compiling your references, our page on professional dress is on page 35. And if you happen to be on campus this afternoon, AJ will be there in the office today from 1:30 to 3 if you need help with professional attire. We have a clothing closet that is open and free to all students. And so you are welcome to walk in this afternoon. And if you need a suit jacket or a skirt or a blouse or anything for this upcoming interview, you can just walk in today from 1:30 to 3. AJ will be there. All right. Let me find that. Oh, interviewing. So the interviewing pages that I mentioned with the STAR technique are on page 38 and 39. And then here is that thank you email sample at the bottom of 39. So this will just give you a nice template to go off of as you're trying to construct that letter for thank you notes. And again, you don't have to write an individual thank you note. like a unique one to every single employer, I would come up with a really good draft and then use that for the different employers you're meeting with. Okay. With that, though, I will open it up to questions. I know 30 minutes is not long enough, so I'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Happy to hang out here if you have individual questions too. I hope that was helpful.